According to two senators, former FBI Director James Comey decided to exonerate Hillary Clinton in her email investigation before the Bureau even interviewed key witnesses in the case. Was a fix-in? Jay Sekulow and Ari Fleischer weigh in next. Stay with us.
Although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
And that was then FBI Director James Comey announcing back in July of 2016 that the Bureau would not recommend charges for Hillary Clinton. Now, a bombshell new discovery from two U.S. senators is casting doubt on whether Comey was taking the investigation into Clinton's misconduct seriously. In a letter written to current FBI Director Christopher Wray, Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham alleged that Comey drafted a statement clearing Clinton of all charges, quote, long before FBI agents finished their work, end quote. According to the senators, the statement was drafted before Hillary Clinton was even interviewed. And joining us now with reaction to these shocking new revelations from the American Center for Law and Justice, President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, and Fox News contributor, former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer. Gentlemen, this is a huge story, really quite a bombshell. It's one that many people were talking about during the campaign, but now we're actually seeing the story has some legs to it. Jay, I'll begin with you. Do you feel that there is a violation here of the Hatch Act?
I think the Hatch Act at a minimum, but I think there's something more serious. And that is the whole investigation evidently was just a fraud on the American people. It was a faux investigation. You've got James Comey now with emails going back and forth where he's drafting 3 months before they interview 16 witnesses, including the supposed target of the investigation, exoneration, basically a declination letter before they interviewed the witnesses. So you got to ask yourself, really, what's going on here? And James Comey had the nerve to testify under oath that he had to come forward last July to make his statement because the whole process where Loretta Lynch met with President Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix cast doubt on the scope and nature of the investigation and the integrity of the Department of Justice and the FBI. But, Kimberly, here's the fact. The fact is, evidently, he already made up his mind 3 months before the investigation really got underway. So this whole thing was a fraud on the American people.
It's really outrageous. It's beyond conduct unconscionable. Really, it's interfering with the system of justice as we know it. The investigation was already predetermined, the outcome. So that's why people are outraged and upset and really keying in on this particular story tonight. I'm going to go to Ari and ask you, is there any reasonable excuse for drafting a statement like this early on? See if you can come up with one.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have tremendous respect for the FBI. I've always been one of those people who have just the deepest thoughts of the integrity of that institution. And this story has shaken my belief in the integrity of the institution, at least as it was being led by James Comey. Because what we're hearing here is, if this is true, that investigation, the most high-profile, important thing the FBI was doing, was a sham. The only excuse I could think of, and I hope this is true, is that he also had a similar statement if he was going to bring criminal charges. So perhaps he was being diligent, prepared two different statements. But I think if that was the case, the investigators would have found the documentation for that as well. They only found it for the exoneration theory.
It's fascinating. It's such a great point. That would have been the best way for them to try to exonerate, to say, wait a second, let's play this down a second, because we actually prepared too in the event of, the outcome, depending on what it was. But if they don't have the evidence, Jay, to substantiate that, and believe me, Comey has always said that he is, I'm meticulous about it. I take notes. I type things up. Wouldn't there be some kind of record or notation to back that up?
Of course, but there's also something else here. There's testimony before the Senate committee where the individuals, including the senior counsel to James Comey and his chief of staff, where they said this was a leaning forward document, looking to the fact that we know where this is going, that there's going to be an exoneration. But, Kim, you've litigated cases for a long time as well.
Prosecutor.
Who in the world would draft a document, 3 months before witness interviews are complete, including the subject and target of the investigation, and Cheryl Mills and some of the key individuals involved? 16 or even 17 witnesses not interviewed. That's what I'm saying here. This goes to the heart of a false statement that was made by James Comey when he went and made that whole statement in front of national TV where he lists out the charges of guilt and then says, nevertheless, no prosecutor would charge it. And it takes one other thing. James Comey took over the role of the Attorney General of the United States, where she didn't bother to recuse herself after she had the meeting, but it should have been the Department of Justice making this decision, not James Comey. And the fact he got away with that is inexcusable.
He did get away with it, right, Ari, at the time?
And I think Deputy Attorney General, Deputy FBI Director Andy McCabe has some explaining to do, too.
Right.
This shakes your faith in that bureau. It shakes your faith in everything the American people have to believe the FBI when they say they looked into it and here's what they found. When Comey came out with that finding against Hillary, I didn't like it, but I accepted it.
Right.
I accepted it because you have to accept what law enforcement tells you, or our society breaks down. Comey's got a lot of explaining to do. Andy McCabe has explaining to do. The American people have a right to hear it, and they need to be held. Their feet need to be held to the fire. We need to know.
You're absolutely right. I mean, they deserve
Comey
justice in this case, which means the truth. I think you're right about that, because it was already, we saw, you know, kind of shades of this being highly problematic when, you, as you said, he stepped over the bounds in terms of his role as an investigator, the head of the FBI, and then became judge and jury and said, okay, I'm going to tell you that no reasonable prosecutor, that is not your job. That already undermines the credibility of the investigation right there.
And no reasonable FBI director would have leaked a conversation he had with the President of the United States to a friend of his so they could leak it to the New York Times.
Ethical
no reasonable person would do that either. Criminality, he needs to hire a good criminal defense lawyer, in my view.
All right, and we'll see. What do you? Quick final comment, Christopher Wray. What should he do about this?
He should demand from James Comey to hear what happened, and James Comey needs to go public and say it too. This is serious. It gets to the core.
Put him under oath.
Can we trust the FBI or not? We must trust the FBI. If something was done wrong, Wray needs to out it.
I think you're absolutely right, and they have to do that to restore some of the faith and credibility. You know what? The hard-working men and women of the FBI that put it on the line every day to serve this country, they deserve better than that. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate it so much, Jay and Ari. Coming up, Hillary Clinton has released dates for her book tour, and big surprise, she's charging top dollar for VIP tickets. We're going to explain just how much, and we're going to get reaction from Charlie Hurt and Richard Fowler and Larry Elder. Plus, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West joins us later tonight. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. Hillary Clinton is getting ready to hit the road to promote her new book titled What Happened? And she is charging people a pretty penny to meet her. For example, in Canada, she's asking people to pay almost 3,000 Canadian dollars for a VIP ticket. That's over 2,300 American dollars. And guess what? She'll finally be going to Wisconsin as part of her tour. Well, even Morning Joe poked fun at her. Watch this.
Well, the good news is that Hillary Clinton's finally coming to Wisconsin on her book tour.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
How much is she charging?
I have no idea.
No, actually, I think there was a charge.
Oh yeah, no. It's I won't be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least she found Wisconsin. At least she was able to find, you know, the upper Midwest.
Oh my goodness, gentlemen! When you lose Wisconsin, you lose Morning Joe like that, and they're poking fun at you about Wisconsin, you know you're in trouble. All right, joining us now is reaction Fox News contributors Charlie Hurt and Richard Fowler, and radio talk show host Larry Elder. All right, so 3,000 Canadian dollars for a VIP ticket. Okay, Charlie? I mean, she couldn't get the people to show up to vote, but they're going to pay the big bucks, I guess. I don't know.
And you know what? She probably will get people to show up and hear. But you know, it's so amazing to sit back and think about what an extraordinary politician her husband was, and what a terrible politician she is. The idea that she's this tone deaf, and the name of her book is What Happened. Well, if you want to know what happened, this is what happened. And the idea that she would go out there and not realize the optics of how terrible all of this would look for her, and reveal, quite frankly, just exactly why this is what happened. This is why she lost.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's not just emptying the pockets of Americans, Larry. She wants to bleed Canada dry.
Hey, she's not charging the $200,000 that she charges Wall Street, so
right. Oh
look at it
goodness.
like that.
It's a deal.
Look,
it's a deal.
I think it's probably cheaper to wait for the movie, but I'm a big fan of presidential memoirs, even of memoirs of defeated candidates. You learn a lot. Walter Mondale in 1984 lost 49 states to 1. He calls George McGovern, who had lost 12 years earlier in the landslide, and said, when does it stop hurting? And McGovern said, I'll let you know if that happens.
Exactly.
So she got one of the most stinging defeats in presidential history. All the stars were lined up for her. She had the money. She had the endorsement. The DNC had their thumb on the scale for her. She was supposed to win this thing, and for her to reflect over why she lost, I think it's fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading her book.
Well, you know, most certainly. I mean, Richard, what do you make of this? I mean, look, I'm all for the free market and capitalism. So, you know, you go, Hillary, in your Scooby van and just head over to Canada and go around the U.S. And I think she's trying to pick up some votes for the next time around, saying, you know, this is not over yet, folks.
I don't think she's running again, but I think Larry's probably going to buy a book, and I'm pretty sure Larry might pay for a $3,000 VIP ticket in Toronto.
Larry's
so
got a lot
there
of
you
cash.
have it. So there you have it. Larry's getting a VIP ticket, and maybe, just maybe, Kimberly, Charlie might go see her at the Warner Theater here in Washington, so he might buy a VIP ticket as well.
I love fiction,
so she might make $4,000 right here on this panel. So there you go.
Well,
go Hillary.
Exactly. Go ahead.
They're with her, as Hillary she would say.
Maybe the Obamas will take time from shopping for property in Martha's Vineyard, $12 to $15 million a pop, and stop in and pay the $3,000 to Hillary. I don't know.
There you go. You see how Larry worked that in, Charlie? He's like, oh, I got something else for you right there to pull the Obamas into it, too. He's like, there you go.
Listen.
Equal opportunity.
Maybe Donald Trump might buy a ticket, too. You know, he's a billionaire if we see tax returns.
And
so.
we know he's giving $1 million to Harvey Aid in Houston.
This is true.
So he's got the money sitting around.
So, this is true. Better spent
Ivanka,
there.
Jared
Better spent there,
Kushner, their tickets could go around.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Charlie. Do you think that we're going to hear yet another excuse for why the election was lost? I'm just fascinated to see if they can come up with another one.
Well, and you know, early excerpts suggest that the book does talk about the stupid mistakes that she made, but then of course she immediately follows them by more stupid mistakes, which I don't really understand. But I tell you what, I don't think we're going to find in there, Kimberly, is I don't think we're going to find any of real genuine soul searching as to what went wrong and how Democrats have completely lost any real message that appeals to those working class voters that they lost in this election.
That's really the true story.
And I know that, Richard, that you want to find the answers to this, but until there is that real genuine soul searching, I think Democrats are going to be in trouble.
Well, I don't know about that. We haven't read the book yet, but one excerpt talked about how she should have handled Donald Trump when he sort of hovered around her. I thought that was fascinating. Here, this is a tough lady. She accused Donald Trump of being a sexual predator, yet she didn't want to tell him to back off, and she's a strong, tough woman. I thought that was fascinating and very revealing.
Yeah, it was interesting, especially the audio version of that was sort of like creepy big time.
I tend to agree with that point that Larry just made there. I think that there are moments where I thought I wanted to see sort of this, you know, you're going to hear me roar Katy Perry, Hillary sort of, stand up to this bully, and she didn't stand up. So I want to hear more about that particular part of the book. And, you know, we have to see whether or not she talks about what Democrats need to do moving forward. How do they sort of get back the spunk that her husband had in the 90s? Does she talk about that in the book? We have to see. But and also, I mean, I don't know if Charlie's right about this idea that we're looking for a message. I think the recent Fox News poll that says 56% of Americans think that Donald Trump is ripping the country apart shows that, maybe the message is there somewhere.
Yeah, well,
just saying.
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, I mean, but of course that has absolutely nothing to do with the lack of message for Democrats, or the lack of a platform.
It just says that Trump's message isn't working.
Well, it just shows they don't have, though. They don't have a candidate or anybody to kind of run with right now.
And they don't have a set of priorities and a set of policies.
Well, neither did the Republicans at this time during the Obama administration. So, I mean, Donald Trump was their nominee. Donald Trump became their nominee because the Republicans never had a message, and all the establishment candidates lacked a message, and Donald Trump ran over them because of that. So I think every party has their storming and norming, and we're going through that right now.
But the last platform that the Democrats had was the one that Barack Obama provided, and we know that Democrats have lost over 1,000 seats based on that platform.
It wasn't a good candidate. Barack Obama he was a good candidate. He was a good public speaker, and he actually campaigned harder and showed up in the places that Hillary Clinton did it. So let that be the lesson.
He was the only one who could win on that platform.
Well, probably.
it's still the economy, stupid. And Barack Obama gave us the worst economic recovery since 1949, the first president ever to preside over recovery without at least 3% GDP in one growth.
Look at Larry Zoll's going to get a shot in. Larry Zoll's going to get a shot in.
Donald Trump is benefiting from Barack Obama's economic policy today. The reason why the stock market is high, the reason why we're seeing all these jobs come back is because of 8 years of steady economic growth, period, Larry.
Richard, you're lucky we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it right there. All you guys make a lot of money, so go buy some of the tickets and report back to us about Hillary. Coming up, with Antifa violence spiraling out of control, Newt Gingrich is calling on the media